Welcome back, rock stars, to another episode of From the Vault. Ricky Rocks here with the retro action figure review. Last time we looked at the Man of Steel, Superman, with two different figures from DC Direct, and man, that ended up being my most successful and most watched action figure review so far, and I don't know how or why. It's like they say, you tell me, we'll both know. And then I can keep putting out stuff you like to see, because that blew my mind, man. I'm so happy. Thank you guys for checking out that video. But I want to say, I really want you guys to spread that love around to some of my other videos, because, there's a couple dozen others that a lot of you guys haven't seen yet, it would look like, from the number of views they got, or didn't get, as the case may be. So, no pressure, but, share it around, pass it around, the Hogan's, the Wonder Woman's, the Hasbro stuff, everything. Spread the love. That's all I'm saying. But since last time we talked about the Man of Steel, today we're going to be talking about his opposite, as it were. I think it's only right, after talking so much about Superman, that we talk into his arch-nemesis, the one and only Lex Luthor. Specifically, today on From the Vault, we're going to be looking at Battle Armor Lex Luthor from Series 2, Crisis on Infinite Earths by DC Direct. Now, there's a lot of history behind this version of Lex Luthor. It's a great representation, usually known as Power Suit Lex Luthor, but sometimes it's Battle Armor Lex Luthor. Either way, very classic and iconic design. Take a shot every time I say the word iconic, and you barely make it through these videos, I'm telling you. But what can I say? When it's the truth, it's the truth, and it's definitely the truth in this case. Now, this version of Lex Luthor debuted in 1983, and first done in action figure form, a very classic Kenner Superpowers line. Happen to have that guy right here. This was the first ever Lex Luthor action figure done by Kenner, and almost exactly the way he looked in the comic books. This would have come out in 1985 or so, so the battle armor would have been in use for about 2 years or so by that point. They probably put it into pre-production shortly after it debuted, I would think. But yeah, this guy, I had this figure as a kid, not this specific one, it's in a box somewhere, but this is one I got, because my other one got a little scuffed up. But yeah, this Lex Luthor was one of my favorite toys as a kid, and you better believe he was in every single action figure battle I ever had as a kid. So yeah, really great look. Only thing that was a little off was the pink. It's supposed to be a little bit more of a purple, but I mean, it's close enough. Really good. But so that was the original, and then you jump forward to, what year was this? Probably around 2007 or 8, I want to say. It doesn't say on the package here, but I remember when I got this figure originally, and was so excited to have a modern, updated 6 to 7 inch scale version of Power Suit or Battle Armor Lex Luthor. I think it's a great figure, with one caveat. The original version of this figure that I bought, I had to put him in storage for a couple of years when I moved, and then when I took him out of the package, one of his legs was snapped off. So hopefully we don't have any problems with this version of Lex Luthor. That's part of why I bought this figure, was that I needed another one anyway, but also I like opening stuff on camera for you guys. So we're going to be taking a look at that. So we're going to be taking a look at that in a minute. But yeah, this figure is a great representation of the way a lot of people remember Lex Luthor, because a lot of people had that figure as a kid, the Kenner Superpowers. This version of Lex went away with a lot of things from the Superman mythos after the Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1986, so in a way it's fitting that this version of Lex be released under the Crisis on Infinite Earths banner. I played a big role in that series. On the back, see the rest of Series 2. I don't have all of these figures, but I do have a few. I have the Earth 2 Superman, who of course was pivotal in the climax of Crisis on Infinite Earths. We've talked a little bit about Crisis before, but it's a really short note to get you up to speed. The Anti-Monitor was destroying all the different parallel Earths in the entire multiverse, and the superheroes had to stop him. And in doing so, by destroying the Anti-Monitor, what remained of those parallel universes got condensed into one singular reality. And going forward after 1986, that's how the DC universe works. No more multiverse, one singular Earth with one version of each character. So that's the way it was for about 20 years after the fact. But Crisis was the story that enabled that big reboot, and that's why it's to this day considered to be probably the most important story, definitely the biggest crossover story in DC history. A lot of important things happened there. Lex, just like Superman, a pivotal part of that. I do have Superman, Flash, and of course Lex from this series. I didn't get my hands on the Anti-Monitor yet, though. Something we'll definitely have to come back to. But yeah, so while the Anti-Monitor was wreaking havoc across the multiverse, Luthor and Brainiac were working together to try and consolidate their power on Earth, take over what was presumed to be left. Lex, being the kind of calculating guy he is, he really didn't question that the superheroes would stop the Anti-Monitor, but his hope was that they'd be so distracted and ultimately devastated in doing so that the villains and Luthor himself could rule what was left in the wake of that. Obviously, they didn't succeed. In the end, everything got wiped out anyway. So this version of Lex, this was the last time we saw this Lex Luthor was in Crisis on Infinite Earths. After that, he was wiped out of the canon, replaced by evil billionaire Lex Luthor, the standard for the next 20 years, until somewhere around 2005, during the Public Enemies arc, President Lex reverted to type and once again donned a battle suit very similar to this one. We're going to talk about that figure another day, but for now it's strictly classic Lex Luthor. So yeah, definitely excited to get my hands on this figure once again. I'm going to be taking it out of the package for you guys in just a minute to go over all the fine details. It really is a great figure. I was so mad when the leg broke off my other one because before that it had never given me any problems. And yeah, it was just a real joy to have this guy in my collection. So it's great to have him back once again. Maybe I'll be a little more delicate this time. But we're going to be back in just a minute to show you what this guy looks like out of the package. So get ready for that. We're going to be back. You better sit tight and get ready. And here he is, the one and only Lex Luthor in his iconic battle armor or power suit. Excellent rendition of this character. Looks very, very close, almost identical to how he looked in the comic books, specifically Crisis on Infinite Earths, 1986, George Perez. Beautiful artwork in those books, and this is about as close as it gets. I was so excited to see this figure was coming out back in the day. Like I said, would have been around 2007 or so, I believe, when this specific figure was released by DC Direct, and I could not wait to get my hands on it because it is one of the most well-known versions of Superman's greatest arch-enemy. Originally debuting in 1983, specifically Action Comics number 544, this battle suit helped Lex Luthor fight against Superman on a more level playing field. It gave him all kinds of powers. He could fly, he could project force fields, he could trap Superman in a cocoon of red sun energy, he could figure out if people were telling the truth, he could hypnotize people. All kinds of powers Luthor built into this suit over time. Crafted on the planet Lexor, the planet where Lex Luthor was revered almost like their version of Superman after he saved them from near destruction. Lex Luthor became their planet's greatest hero. They even renamed their planet after him. In later years, he was exposed as the criminal and villain he is by Superman. And in so, Lex built this armor so he could fight Superman on a much more level playing field. Didn't appear as often as you might remember or think, but became so memorable thanks to that Kenner Superpowers action figure that so many kids had growing up, myself included, and this right here is a beautiful, modernized, updated version There have been many different battle armors worn by Lex Luthor over the years, but this, in my opinion, is the best, the greatest of all. None of the modern versions do it justice, in my opinion. This is what you think of when you think of Lex Luthor in his power suit. Just a minute, we're going to be back and we're going to take an up close look, hands on, like we love to do. But for now, just take it all in. Lex Luthor in his battle armor power suit. And so here we have Lex Luthor out of the package up close. This is a great figure. I really love the way it looks. Like all DC Direct figures, the articulation isn't fantastic, and it is especially limited by the fact he is wearing the power suit. No version of this figure has fantastic articulation. That's just the way it is, because the sculpting means you're going to lose a lot. And in this case, you definitely are limited, but you can still get him into some pretty cool villain poses, like here, come on, yeah. And you know, it's really just about recreating the general way the figure looked at that specific point in time. And again, there's a really historic version of Luthor, because this was the last time this version of him ever appeared in comics for a number of years. They teased it about a year later in John Byrne's Man of Steel #5. The first issue of that has Superman holding up someone wearing this specific suit, and it turns out to be a LexCorp employee who's gone brain dead because the suit would fry the brains of anybody wearing it. So Lex himself didn't wear this armor in post-crisis continuity until 2005. So this suit showed up in 1983 and disappeared in 1986. So short run for such a well-known and well-remembered version of the character. But like I said before, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of kids had the Superpowers action figure, and he did make a fair number of appearances in the comics wearing this suit. So it's a great look. One thing I want to point out is my only real gripe with the look of it is the purple itself. It's fine on its own for what it is. It's not quite comics accurate. Now, the prototype version that they show on the back of the package is a lot more comic book accurate. That shade of purple is really close to what it looked like in the pages of the comics, whereas the figure, it's more of like a cherry or plum type of purple, or like a grape. I don't know. It's not quite the proper shade, but it's forgivable, especially since, as we pointed out before, this iconic Superpowers Kenner figure has like a very pinkish version. You know, there's a lot of variance even within the comics themselves, but these are like two extremes of the same look, whereas this right here was pretty much the closest to how it actually looked in the comics. But you know, what can you do? Close enough is close enough, and sometimes it just has to be close enough. So it's really that cool. I got no real problem with the fact that it's a little bit different. I love the look of it all the same. Really, really cool. You know, it's a shame that this look didn't stick around for a little bit longer. Like I said, when I looked it up and found out how short a run this version of the character actually existed for, I was pretty shocked. But again, I think when we were kids, if you read comics like I did, you would see the advertisements for the Kenner Superpowers figures all the time, and you would see Superman fighting Lex Luthor in this battle suit. So, you know, you saw it a lot. So it really makes you believe that this look stuck around for a lot longer than it really did. I mean, it's so well remembered that they keep bringing back some version of it even to this day. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, in any shade, right, I think the look of the armor has always been very garish. It's eye-catching, not necessarily eye-pleasing. The color scheme is very interesting. Green and purple, they don't necessarily complement, but the way they do, right? I think what they were going for here is that since Superman is made up of the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, I figured that they were thinking with Luthor they would counterbalance that by going with the composite colors of green and purple, sort of invert the scheme there. That's just my 7th grade art class analysis. But yeah, now the suit itself, it's very odd. Like, it's cool looking, it's memorable, you definitely remember it. But then you look at it, and it's like, well, why is he wearing the skirt? And like, I remember famously in the comics, Deathstroke mocked him for the fact that he has this expensive battle armor, but doesn't even give himself a face mask or helmet to protect himself, which ultimately he chalks up to Lex's ego. He has to let everybody know who it is that's doing the thing. So yeah, that's a lot of questionable and interesting choices on Luthor's part. Later versions of this suit in modern comics, they're powered by kryptonite, or they were built with apocalyptic or Kryptonian technology. But this version of the suit from 1983 to 86 was built on the planet Lexor, a planet that circled a red sun, which would negate Superman's superpowers. And when Lex would wear this suit while on planet Lexor, that would make him more powerful than Superman, thanks to the armor and the red sun. So, yeah, they had some pretty interesting battles while Lex was sporting this look. Ultimately, that planet Lexor was destroyed. Lex was accidentally responsible. His wife and child were killed in that, and that just gave him even more reason to hate Superman, who he blamed for the whole thing, even though it was his fault, because that's Lex Luthor for you. So in any case, this was a great looking figure to represent that version of Lex. Articulation-wise, you can't really do much with the head because the armor's in the way. It looks great, but it's very hard plastic up top. No room to really move the head, and you do lose a little bit of shoulders with that as well. You can move them forward and back, and a little bit of side to side. As you can see, not too much. You are limited by the armor. Now, I have to believe if they did this figure now, they would cut a seam in the shoulder of the armor so you can move that as well. As a matter of fact, I do have a Mattel version of this figure. I just haven't opened it yet because I'm saving that for a future episode. And I wouldn't doubt that that figure they managed to cut a lot more seams in. I just don't know because I haven't handled one of them yet. But we will get to that figure very soon. This is, again, DC Direct, which are notorious for being quote-unquote posable statues. That's not always fair. This one does give you, enough to mess around with. No real waist or torso articulation. You got the shoulders, you got the elbows. This guy's real stiff out of the package, as a lot of them can be. And as we've talked about, you don't necessarily want to move these guys around too much anyway, because they don't always hold up the DC Directs. This was a pretty good one from later on, though. You got the wrist articulation here. I would have put a seam here at the forearm, right where the glove is, but they didn't do that. That would have been cool. With all the lines on the armor, you easily could have had like a swivel here somehow, but they didn't do that. But again, this was DC Direct. This was 2007 or so. Mattel was pretty new into the game, and DC Direct hadn't really caught up to that yet. Let's see, you got the wrist seams. The legs, you get a little bit of abduction there, side to side, but not a lot. Forward and back, this guy does feel a little loose at the hips. That would worry me a little bit, only because, like I said, my first figure of this, one of his legs snapped at the hips. So this one, I'm going to be real careful with, and I would advise doing the same, just because, like, the one leg feels a little looser than the other already out of the package. Just something to be aware of. I'm definitely going to be gentle with this guy, simply because of what happened to me in the past. You got the knees, of course. So, it's not a bad figure at all articulation-wise. It's about what you would expect for a 2007 figure. I was definitely not disappointed then, and I'm not really disappointed now. I know the Mattel one you can get a lot more movement and posability out of, but I'm fine with it. Front to back, again, this is a really perfect look. This is almost exactly how he looked in the comics, and I always love that. And I love the detailing in the sculpt, the belt, the line work on the interior armor. Love that. The detailing on the gloves, love that. Boots, belt, the chest logo. I've never quite understood what that was supposed to be, but it is what it is. And yeah, I mean, the Kenner figure has just about as much detail in 4-inch scale, which is really, really cool. But for a more modern, full scale figure like this, this was about as good as you can get by that standard 2007 or so. Great, great figure, in my opinion. I wish you could do a little bit more with it, but, you can at least mess around with it and get him into some pretty cool supervillain poses. And he stands pretty well without help, as you can see. But in case you're having trouble, they do give you this really awesome Crisis on Infinite Earths base. They all came with this. I got a bunch of them. I always save them. I got a whole box full of just the bases for all my DC Direct figures. So yeah, if you need standing up help, you got the base there. But he stands really well on his own. Not really a necessary piece of the puzzle, but I think it helps complete the puzzle and let you know exactly which story this figure is from. And I used to love that, as I've talked about, from DC Direct. I always loved how they would rip versions of these characters right out of the page and recreate them perfectly. This is as close as it gets to how the character looked in 1986, and it just doesn't get much better than this. It makes me excited to review the Mattel one in a future episode, just because I can't wait to see how much more posability it has. And, that's kind of like a backhanded compliment to this figure, I know, but at the same time, as I always talk about, evolution, right? That's what I love doing with these figures, is comparing and contrasting the evolution, just like we did before, So we're definitely going to keep these guys around, so when I get to the Mattel one, we're going to show like the 1, 2, 3, and the A through the Z, baba, counting them zoom in. And, the biggest differences here between these two figures just being the color scheme and a little bit of sculpting. As you can see, the belt is different on both sides, but Lex would slightly modify this armor a few times between 83 and 86, so it's like kind of fitting that there's slight differences. But yeah, everything from the old to the new, I always love to show that off. So yeah, I just really couldn't wait to do this figure specifically. We're going to be doing an in-depth look at this one again when we get to do the Superpowers line, which, believe me, we're going to talk about the Superpowers line. I've been putting it off for a reason, but we are going to talk about the Superpowers line and the Toy Biz line and everything all the way through up to DC Direct and Mattel, because that's what we do. We talk about bringing old school to the new school. That's what I'm always saying, right? So we got a lot to cover and a lot to look forward to. But for now, this is it. This is a really cool figure, and it's really easy to get your hands on to this day, and it's not too expensive from what I have seen. I'm pretty sure I didn't pay more than $30 for this guy. I know he came out around 20-ish, and I see him online all the time. Not a hard figure to get at all, and if you're doing a pre-Crisis display or a Superman villains display or a Lex display, because there's been a lot of different figures of him in some variant of battle armor, most of them actually, which kind of annoys me because there's very few figures of Lex in just a suit, which is how he looked from 86 through 2005 before he reverted to this look again, and his Super Friends costume with the purple shirt with the collar thing. I never really understood why they didn't do more figures of Lex in his modern look outside of the Toy Biz one, but they did. I think Hasbro did one too in one of their box sets or something. But I mean, yeah, there's way more versions of Lex in some sort of battle suit. This is one of my favorites by far. I really like the Public Enemies one, also from 2005, the Ed McGuinness one. I like the Mattel one. I'm not really too fond of the more modern ones. They keep trying to update this look. They really bring up more purple, so that like the undersuit's purple and it's got green on top of it. And it's like it's a way to go, but I don't know. I think the purple looks better when it's just trim, and the suit itself is mostly green. And I don't know. I know they've tried to streamline it, they've tried to update it, modernize it, but to me, this is what I think of when I think of Lex Luthor's battle armor or power suit. I think you can't really improve on perfection, and I think they nailed the look right out of the gate. This is classic for a reason, folks. That's why they keep bringing it back just to mess with it. But you can mess with it, but I don't think you improve on it. And while this isn't necessarily my favorite version of Lex, it's definitely very, very close. And it's the one as a kid I mostly recognized and identified with. So I do have a strong nostalgia for this version of Lex, even though I'm more fond, like a lot of people are, to businessman Lex or President Lex. But, there's a reason it all keeps coming back to this in some way, and that's because even though it was only around for a very brief time, 3 years tops, it made a very big impression on a lot of people, a lot of kids who read the comics and had the action figure. And having a modern version of that on your shelf, why would you not want that? I say go get this figure as soon as you can. It's out there online for really reasonable prices. You can find it anywhere. I would say be careful with the legs just because of what happened to me once upon a time. But, so far so good with this guy. I think it's great, and I'm going to be happy to have him on the shelf right next to all my Superman figures, of which there are many. Definitely check this guy out if you can find him for a reasonable price, which I guarantee you can. Pick him up, add him to your DC Direct collection, and definitely get the Mattel one too. I can't wait to do that video. We're going to do it soon. Promise. But until then, we're going to be taking a look at some other stuff. Probably going to look at some more DC stuff before we look at anything else, because I got a lot of DC stuff on tap, and people keep telling me they like that. They keep telling me they like that, but they don't always, share it as much as I would want them to. So like I said, like it, share it, subscribe to it, pass it around, comment on it, tell me what you really, really liked and even what you didn't like, and maybe I'll do it different. Probably won't. I do my thing, and I just hope that you like it. I hope you had fun this time out. I'm really glad you guys loved the Superman video. Hopefully you love this one about as much. I would love that. But until next time, this is Ricky Rocks from the Vault. We're going to be coming at you real soon with some more retro action figure awesomeness. Until then, take your toys out of the box. Don't let them rot in a plastic prison. Take them out. Play with them. Pose them. Get your hands on them, because that's what they were made for. And if you're not doing that, I just don't know what you're doing. I know I'm preaching at you, but I can't help it. To me, there's nothing like taking a figure out of the package and enjoying it and experiencing it the way it's meant to be. I know they look good in the package. That's why I keep the package as much as I can. But we've all got our beliefs, right? So that's how I feel about it. Until next time, this is Ricky Rocks from the Vault signing off. Until next time, if you can't be good, be bad. You already knew that.